Some of you disagreed with my review of Double Black, Double Down, so I had to come write it again. For science. For the betterment of humanity. Because we must know for sure. But this time I wanted to improve the chances that I would give it a fair shake, so I shuttled it instead of climbing to the top. The temperature was a lot cooler this day as well, although the air was pretty smoky from nearby wildfires and the soil was very, very dry. So in a lot of ways it was a wash, but most importantly, I wasn't tired from climbing up Fragrance Lake Road when I got to the top of this, and that did make a world of difference. But before I tell you about what that difference meant for my overall opinion of this trail, I need you to navigate to patreon.com/voiceovertrails and sign up to support opinionated informational content just like this. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and goose the algorithm by liking this video. So let's revisit this, starting from the top, and the first thing that I noticed wasn't a surprise at all, which is that I still really like the top of this trail. It's pretty rad and I have no further notes about it. This is in spite of the fact that it was even more blown out than the last time I rode it. What I didn't like was that I got a flat tire right up here, right at the top of this. I wasn't even a quarter mile into the ride. And the worst part of this was on my Cushcore tire, the one that's not supposed to get flatted by this kind of stuff, and the tire plugs wouldn't fix it because the hole was too big. And that really sucked. On top of that, I broke my rear axle. I don't even ride that hard, okay? I wasn't doing anything extreme. I'm not supposed to be the kind of person who, like, bends rims, punctures tires, and breaks rear axles. Of course, flat tires and broken axles are not at all indicative of a problem with the trail. That's not the trail's fault. It would be unfair to base my opinion of a trail on mechanical problems with my bike, but in spite of, or perhaps just ancillary to that, this flat tire and broken axle do factor somewhat into my revised opinion of this trail, and I think you'll see my logic if you just hear me through this argument. It's not what you think, I promise. But before I do that, let me catch up to my friend Terry, who was having so much fun on this trail that he didn't even notice we'd had a flat to deal with back here, but thank you, Todd. Todd heard me, and he stuck around. I rode this in mid-October, but this year we didn't get any moisture during September or October, and that led to some of the driest, dustiest tread I've ever seen in the Pacific Northwest at any time of the year. I mean, we're talking deep moon dust in some of these corners. Certainly a lot drier and dustier than when I rode it in the summertime, even though it was hotter then. So, I was riding this trail with a tube in my rear tire, as well as a non-optimal traction situation with the tread being so blown out by the weather conditions, and yet I was already still having a better time riding this than the first time I rode it. I attribute a lot of that to the fact that even though I was also just in general not really in the best headspace with all the smoke in the air and the flat tire and everything else just going on in general, I was definitely not bringing my best performance to the ride. Still, in spite of all that, I was having a better ride. Oh yeah, check out this awesome feature. This isn't difficult, but it's a lot of fun as long as you know it's coming and keep your speed up. And this feature a little farther down the trail is how I know I was definitely not in good form today. It's not a difficult jump. All you have to do is just keep your speed up on this, and yet I just kind of couldn't get myself to ride it. Maybe I had too much coffee the morning I rode this. I was definitely jittery, so even though it was the second time I've ridden this trail, my performance was no better than the first time just because I was kind of a personal mess today. So we caught up with Terry at the bottom of Double Down. I still don't like the top of this trail. I'll chalk it up to personal preference, but I really, really hate being forced into high consequence features, especially when I don't have speed. I feel like I'm about 50% reliable when it comes to execution on the bike, so even though I technically have the skill for all these features, I don't execute consistently enough to feel safe rolling into something like this. I don't know if being unable to execute consistently, does that count as still having the skill? I don't know. It's like I know what to do, but I can't always do it. Anyhow, I'm very distractible, and my particular flavor of ADHD kind of makes it dangerous for me to do too much stuff like this. So I won't count this against the trail at all. I won't. I just don't like it. I was definitely in the wrong headspace for Double Down. I've ridden plenty of other Double Blacks and merrily approached and cleared features just like these with no issue in the past, but not today. I don't know what was going on, just not today. It was a really weird feeling riding this trail this day. I promise that in spite of everything, I was in a much better mood than the last time I rode it, but I was still just barely hanging on. My inability to ride these side hills really got under my skin. Like, really got under my skin. And the more that got under my skin, the more my nerves got rattled. And the more my nerves were rattled, the more difficulty I was having. It was just extra infuriating because I know that I know how to ride these. Once you get off your rhythm on a trail like this, it's all over. There's no way to recover without a complete reset for the day. Watching kids in their early teens on bikes that were too big for them ride this feature without hesitation was kind of impressive, maybe a little demoralizing, but it proves that it is more than possible to ride these. Anyhow, I could go on for a while, but it's time for me to get to the point of this review. This is a fun trail. You're right. All of you who disagreed with me are 100% correct. It's fun. It's actually pretty darn rad. So I formally recant my negative review of this. But here's the thing. This is not a trail you should ride alone. And if you're going to go to the trouble of climbing to the top of Chuckanut, this is still the last trail you should ride on the way down. Maybe I'll get heat for this, but this is a shuttle trail. It's a shuttle trail. Fragrance Lake Road is a brutal climb, not so much because of the elevation gain, but the endless steepness. And there's no reasonable case for riding this after climbing to the top when there are so many other trails around here that are more fun to ride as part of a sufferfest. So 3 major variables were different when I rode this. It wasn't a hot day, I hadn't just climbed to the top, and I was riding it with friends. All of those things make this a much better experience, even though I had a flat tire, even though I had shaky nerves, and in spite of the fact it was dry and blown out, and on top of that, it was like the smoke was, I can't articulate how thick the smoke was. It's like my head was stuck inside a campfire. It was so smoky this day, and yet I still had a good time. I'm sure it's not surprising to hear, but the mood you're in can have a profound effect on your assessment of the experience. What do you know? I'd like to take this moment to thank all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Lomi Goodness level sponsors, Andy Suri, Brad Goodson, and Charles Kim. I'd also like to thank all of my Hero Dirt level sponsors, earning their special mention at the end of this video: Brian Fix, Bryce Ulrich, Dave PNW, Devin Yug, Edward Lanton, Heather von Valkenburg, and Pedro Cantorini. If you'd like to double down on supporting informational content like this, go ahead and join all of these supporters in this list by navigating to patreon.com/voiceovertrails and choose a sponsorship level that feels right for the amount of value that you think that you get out of this channel. Now, get out there and go ride your bike.